Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ann Stark, followed by Ivan Way.
Hi, my name is Ann Stark, 4457 Jordan Lane in Waldorf, Maryland.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let me start just by saying I say no to ZTA number 16144 and SRA number 1601. The Board of Appeals exists because the approval process isn't perfect. The Board of Appeals review should not be limited only to what has been presented to the Planning Commission, which isn't always provided with all the information needed for a thorough consideration of a proposed subdivision. I think public participation should be encouraged, not discouraged. I guess, when I ride by communities that are being built, either I need new glasses or I've totally missed it, but I don't see signs going up in this county that say, hey, I'm going to build 50 houses or I'm going to build 1,000 houses. I think it's important that as a citizen of this county that we let the public know. I talk to my neighborhood folks about communities all the time, and they say, I want to move. I can't stand it here. I don't like all this development. That's not why I moved to this rural county. And they complain, and I'm like, get involved, find out. So I guess, I know you can't answer any questions today, but I think we need more signage by the developers that come into this county. They don't have a stake in it, but I do. I have to live here. I have to commute on these roads. And I think it's time that the citizens start speaking up for what they want and stop the greed with all the development. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ivan Way, followed by Lisa Garlock.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ivan Way, and I currently reside at 4066 Edmonton Court South in Sunridge community. And I say no to the ZTA 16-144 and SRA number 16-01 because of the great foregoing arguments, and also because of my experiences after a 2-year period of time in the Sunridge community. There are so many non-compliant areas that the developers and so forth are not being held accountable for it, and we don't seem to be able to do anything about it. And just an overview of the non-compliant areas of road safety. We have no escalation, de-escalation lane in there. There's no tie-in to the road, no stop signs replaced, and the exposed utility wires and the infrastructure / common areas. There are problems there. Inappropriately installed walks with stagnant water, with snakes and mosquitoes and so forth congregating there with all the Zika virus and so forth that's going on. Unfinished sidewalks. There are no continuous sidewalks, so people that are disabled are unable to move around in the community. And the last one, major area, is there's a non-compliance to the American Disabilities Act in terms of handicapped people being able to access common areas such as playgrounds, etc. Continuous sidewalks, as I mentioned before. They don't have easy access. And one major area is as you enter the community, there's no depressed curb so that the people in wheelchairs can access the sidewalks. And I'm very pleased and grateful to be able to have spoken about my concerns today.
Thank you very much.
Lisa Garlock, followed by Daniel Piekarski.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Lisa Garlock, 2961 Edgewood Road and Bryan's Road. And I would like to say I'm also opposed to the changes to the ZTA. and I agree with what the previous people have spoken about. We fought on Guilford. We put an appeal in for the Guilford, and I am adjacent to the proposed Guilford development. Those woods helped to save my life. I had breast cancer about 20 years ago, and just being able to go out in my backyard and have some area where you could go out and see the birds and the deer and all the animals was just wonderful. Another gentleman in my neighborhood right now is suffering with kidney problems and lupus. And those woods, you would not believe how much that helps his recovery. And without our ability to have appealed, we wouldn't have any of that. And I just want to say we need to be able to have new information presented if necessary when we make appeals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Piekarski, followed by Tara Carlson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Daniel Piekarski, and I live at 4066 Edmonton Court South. And I really didn't want to sign up because everything is redundant, what I have to say. So I really appreciate that I'm saying, for my behalf, no to ZTA 116-144 and SRA 1601. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tara Carlson, followed by Hannah Seligman.
Good
My
evening.
name is Tara Carlson, and I live at 8807 Dement Court, Waldorf, Maryland. Further limitations on who can appeal would do a disservice to the public. Limiting what can be presented to only on the record would do a disservice to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hannah Seligman, followed by Molly Harold.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Hannah Seligman. I live in Bryan's Road, Maryland. And from my perspective, we are a team. We are working together to build a Charles County that enhances the people who live here, the people who work here, and the people who play here. The county commissioners, the Board of Appeals, the planning committee, and the constituents, we work together to make decisions. That's the premise of the land use article, allowing any persons to provide comment. I think that Guilford and Washington Discovery are both prime examples of how persons submitting comment can provide a safety check. So I'm asking you to please revise this bill so that persons can make comment, not just parties, and so that persons can provide new information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Molly Harold, followed by Daniel Loveless.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Molly, and I'm from Bryan's Road, Maryland. I'd ask you to please revise this zoning text amendment so that persons can submit new information to the Board of Appeals and that they can also have the ability to appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Daniel Loveless, followed by Bryan Moon.
My name's Daniel Loveless, but I'm here to speak on behalf of Dominion for the appeals for the permit. I don't know how my name got on this list.
That's the next hearing, sir. Okay, thank you.
You might check to make sure you're on the Board of Appeals.
Please do.
Bryan Moon, followed by Kurt Wolfgang.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I testified before the Planning Commission on this topic, and perhaps my testimony to them was a little bit confusing, so I'll be a little more blunt this evening. Most of the time, the experts get it right. Most of the time, county staff gives our citizens excellent advice, and most of the time, the administrative decisions that come before us are the right decisions. But sometimes our zoning texts and our land use definitions and our subdivision regulations don't perfectly anticipate a situation. Sometimes our professional planners, engineers, and attorneys, with the best of intentions, get it wrong. And that is why the state of Maryland requires every county to have a Board of Appeals, because sometimes land use determinations need a second look. The Board of Appeals, made up of citizen volunteers, provides that function. We conduct hearings where all parties and interested persons are heard. We gather evidence and find fact in a fair and impartial manner, and we do it on camera in front of the citizens. We typically find solutions that keep the county and our citizens from suing each other. The draft prepared by the county attorney's office is bad for the citizens of Charles County. It is confusing. Even the purpose of the draft cannot easily be understood. The draft only contemplates appeals of planning commission decisions. The draft ignores the fact that appeals are also heard for other administrative decisions like zoning officer determinations where there is no record. The draft eliminates public notice requirements for appeals. The draft makes language about who can be a party even more confusing than it already was. The draft silences our citizens during appeal hearings. The draft prohibits citizens from introducing evidence during an appeal. The draft requires appeals to be considered on the record even when there is no record to consider. The draft prepared by the county attorney's office removes due process rights, and it will result in more administrative decisions heading to court. I urge you to reject that draft. Instead, I recommend approval of the draft amendment I prepared and submitted to the Planning Commission. The changes I proposed are very simple, they're very clear, they retain the open and accessible atmosphere that we have promised to our citizens, and if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Kurt Wolfgang, followed by Bonnie Beck.
Good evening.
Good evening.
With such a limited amount of time, I'm going to focus on really two issues. And one, Jim Long raised earlier, the issue of person versus party being able to appeal. There is a significant difference in Maryland law having to do with that issue, and you find that issue in significantly in Maryland case law that has been already decided. Where the issue comes up regarding other matters, but not Board of Appeal matters, because in the land use article 4-306 that has to do with boards of appeal, the statute there specifically indicates that a person aggrieved by a decision of an administrative officer or unit will have the right to appeal. So specifically, I will say that if this commission, if the commissioners vote to change it to party, that is completely an abrogation of the state statute, the land use article, the subtitle having to do with boards of appeal. Likewise, I would say to you, the other gravely concerning issue is the abolishment of the de novo appeal. It has been long-standing practice in Maryland that boards of appeal have de novo authority, and that is so for a number of reasons. One of them, in my view, is that it does streamline the process. You know, some people would argue to the contrary, but it does streamline the process. It ends up in fewer cases being taken to court, for example, on an appeal. But it also will take care of a number of situations in which the Board of Appeals does not hear the entire matter that is of concern the first time around for whatever reason. Part of the problem is that we assume that the entire story is going to be told whenever there is some sort of a judicial, or what they would call a quasi-judicial hearing. It's not true. It's not true. It doesn't happen that way. A good example is a lot of the things before the Planning Commission have a 2-week notice, and there's many people who are not able to respond within that period of time.
Can you summarize for us, please?
The de novo is also required, in my view, by a reading of the zoning article, the Board of Appeals subtitle, and the case law, and it's also the best way of doing this.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Bonnie Beck, followed by Laurie Snow.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Bonnie Beck, and I live in Oxon Hill, and I am the Conservation Chair for Charles County for the Sierra Club. And I do not support the ZTA or the SRA. And I did testify in front of the Planning Commission, and I was very disappointed that they embraced these changes because they're clearly designed to cut down public participation. And I know as a progressive county commissioner board, I hope that you will support public participation and continue to have de novo for the Board of Appeals, and all aggrieved persons should be able to participate. And I would also request that the fee be reduced to be comparable to our adjoining counties for the appeals. And I feel that the Guilford issue is one that it was really incredibly important that not go forward, because the Planning Commission wasn't given the information about Billingsley Road that they needed to make a good decision. And so it's just emphasized the need for public participation and de novo, because new information was necessary. And with these changes, with the positive changes that were recommended by Bryan Moon, the chair of the Board of Appeals, this will be good for the public interest and the well-being of the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Laurie Snow, followed by Chris Dudley.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Laurie Snow. I reside at 2888 Cameo Place in Bryan's Road, Maryland. I'm here tonight not with prepared remarks to voice my concern about this issue. Please oppose these amendments. I ask this of you because my experience coming before this board and others at the local government level has been enlightening since my time here started in Charles County. And oftentimes, you don't have all the information up front. That is the case in so many of the hearings that I have participated in, and sometimes that can't be helped. Sometimes it's nobody's fault. But later on, when that information does come to the surface, it is so important that it's considered as well. I'm here to ask that you consider the comments by the Smarter Growth Alliance and the Matter Women Watershed Society and change the way this is going to increase public participation as this county is growing and there are a lot of issues at hand that the public could and should participate in. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Chris Dudley, followed by Peggy Lafleur.
So I guess everything I'm saying is essentially all summary, so you don't have to remind me.
Can you give us your name and address, please?
My name is Chris Dudley. I live in Bryan's Road.
Good, thank you.
So I just want to say what happened in Guilford. Well, the county attorney got taken to the woodshed, and county staff got taken to the woodshed on account of errors that occurred before the Planning Commission. That was what turned up in Guilford. And the Planning Commission did not get taken to the woodshed. They just got reversed. But I think maybe they feel like they did. And so now we're here with this bill trying to take the Board of Appeals to the woodshed. But it's not right. You know, if you get embarrassed because you made a mistake, that's not a reason to write legislation to wreck the purpose of the Board of Appeals. That's not a good idea. And, you know, you're faced with a decision on this now. Okay? Well, you appointed this Board of Appeals. These are your people that you appointed, and if you pass this now, you're going to be declaring that you have no confidence in the people that you appointed. You're going to be taken to the woodshed, or taking yourself to the woodshed by saying, we don't believe in our Board of Appeals people, right? They actually spend the time to think about what the Board of Appeals is for, not thinking about how can we undercut it, how can we make it weaker, make it less useful to the county. Okay? So these are your appointees. I think you should take the advice of Brandon on how this should proceed, because he actually has thought about it from a disinterested point of view, from being the person that you asked to think about it. He's the guy. Follow him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peggy Lafleur. Ms. Lafleur is our last speaker for the evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Peggy Lafleur. I am from Bryan's Road. I've been in Charles County for probably close to 30 years. I'm going to make this very short and sweet. I'd like to be put on the record that I support the Chair of Board of Appeals testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our public testimony portion of the hearing. At this time, is there a motion to end the public hearing?
Is there a motion to end the public hearing? It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It passes unanimously. Close the hearing.